Lastly, a heartfelt thanks to the 200 volunteers who made this edition possible. One final note. I'd like to remind you that the next session will last 75 minutes, with the final 15 minutes dedicated to your questions. Please also remember to check the updated event schedule on www.tryestnext.t, which you can access via the QR code. Enjoy the event and have a great festival.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. May I have your attention, please? Thank you. Hello, good afternoon. I would like to welcome you all to this session, Rebuilding Scientific Knowledge Post-Crisis at the Trieste Next Festival della Ricerca Scientifica. My name is Payal Patel and I'm the TWAS Associate Program Officer. TWAS was founded in 1983, born with the belief that developing nations could build the knowledge and skills necessary to tackle challenges such as hunger, disease, and poverty. Spearheaded by Nobel laureate and ICTP founder Abdus Salam, TWAS was officially inaugurated in 1985 with a ceremony attended by the then UN Secretary General. The photograph that you see on the slide is actually from the inauguration ceremony. Now celebrating its 40th anniversary, TWAS continues to uphold its founder's vision. The Academy's work is more relevant than ever, as new challenges like climate change, biodiversity loss, and increasing inequality threaten the progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the SDGs. TWAS is a program unit of UNESCO. Since TWAS's inception, the Italian government has provided core funding for the Academy's operations. The partnership with Italy is central to the Academy's activities and its programs. For 4 decades, the Abdus Salam International Center for Theoretical Physics has provided essential support and partnership to TWAS. Today, TWAS also hosts the Secretariat of the Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World, also known as OWSD, the InterAcademy Partnership, also known as IAP, and the support given to the scientists. Over 12,000 scientists have received support through TWAS programs and its activities. TWAS has played a pivotal role in fostering research and innovation, contributing significantly to the advancement and prosperity of these regions. The chart that you see there shows the trend across the TWAS programs from 1985 till date, where we reach over 12,000 scientists. Now, before I go into introducing today's panel, the topic is very relevant and very valid in the times in which we live today. Rebuilding scientific knowledge after a crisis involves several critical steps to ensure the restoration and advancement of science systems, scientific research, infrastructure, and education. There is a need for a more coordinated and proactive approach. Less about being reactive and more about being proactive. We must identify the gaps in current support mechanisms and develop new and more encompassing ways to protect scientists and research in times of crisis. We have a wonderful panel of speakers put together for you. I will introduce them. Peter McGrath, the coordinator for the InterAcademy Partnership. Phyu Tin Zhao, lecturer in health settings at the Hong Kong University. Tonya Blowers is the coordinator at the Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World, and Alessandro Garbellini, the head at the Office for Space, Scientific, Multilateral Cooperation and Intellectual Property at the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. Now, before I hand the floor over to our first speaker, Peter, I would just like to remind the audience that the information, opinions, and recommendations presented during this session do not necessarily reflect the values and beliefs of the organizations represented in the panel. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I get the honor of being the first speaker in this. I don't know where to stand to see everybody. I'm going to try and set the scene on this issue, and I'm probably in people's way, so I'll walk side to side so you can all see the slides. TWAS and its partner organizations, IAP and OWSD especially, have been trying to tackle this issue of supporting scientists when they are forced to leave their country because of war, because of civil violence, or even because of economic collapse, whatever the reasons might be. More and more climate change and drought are having effects on people, forcing them to leave their homes. But of course, TWAS, as you've heard, it spends its time trying to build scientific capacity in such countries and maintaining that capacity, and we don't want to lose the hard work by allowing these people to leave and then not supporting them when they arrive somewhere else. So how big is the problem? We started really in 2017, and this is an excerpt from the editorial of a newsletter article, a newsletter that we dedicated to this issue. At that time, countries like Syria, Afghanistan, Yemen, and Iraq were all, let's say, having difficulties with wars, with insecurities, and so on, and people were migrating. There was a mass migration at that time that had been unprecedented since the days of World War II. So really, Europe was in particular was standing up, starting to take notice. What can we do to deal with this issue? I mean, we're talking not just scientists here, but everybody who's forced to leave their country. The situation is not improving. By 2021, the United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, was saying that every 2 seconds somebody else is forced to leave their country. This is a continuing exodus. There were, at that time, 79.5 million people displaced from their homes, 5 countries accounting for 2/3 of those. You see Syria, 6 million people, Venezuela, Afghanistan, South Sudan, and Myanmar, another 1 million people back in 2021 when we wrote this article that was published in the UNESCO Science Report. And amongst these, of course, are scientists, but scientists, medical doctors, dentists, engineers, people that have gone through, a lifetime's worth of training to reach the level of education, of training that they're at. And when they arrive in a new country, sometimes their certificates, their bachelor's degree, their master's, their PhD, even their medical training is almost worthless if it is not recognized by the country that they end up in. So this is one of the problems that we have. And you can see here in this newspaper article, during COVID, the health systems were crying out for more doctors because everybody was under pressure. There were 15,000 or 14,000 Syrian doctors in Germany alone displaced from Syria. with their medical certificates, but they were having trouble getting them certified in Germany, so they couldn't actually work as doctors to ease the crisis in Germany. But this is what we call, in the title of this article, the win-win situation. If countries have systems to help scientists when they arrive, it's a win for the scientists because they can carry on with their research, with their career, and it's a win for the host country because that host country gains the benefit of having another trained professional working in their laboratories, working in their hospitals, doing what they do best. So, fortunately, there are organizations dedicated to helping scientists. These are just a quick sample. In the UK, there is CARA, the Council for At-Risk Academics. In France, there is PAUSE, again, sort of placing academics, scholars that end up in France, placing them in research centers and universities and so on. In Germany, it's a little bit the other way around. The academic centers, the universities, the research centers identify a scientist that needs help. They apply to the Humboldt Stiftung funding, and they can then bring that person into Germany or host them in Germany for at least a couple of years. But very often these are short-term solutions, 1 year, 2 years, so not ideal. In Italy, we have a branch of the Scholars at Risk. It's a more international organization that, again, as the title says, Scholars at Risk, it helps. Opportunities do exist, but they are much, much fewer than the numbers that are required. So there's always an over-demand for the places available. But what can we do to help, other than providing fellowships? The diaspora organizations can be very effective. You know, with modern technologies, we all have cell phones now. You can stay connected. There are WhatsApp groups, other platforms, other software that help countries stay together even though they're dispersed around the world. And these groups can also act, what is very important, in mentoring. And even two types of mentoring are required here. One can be social mentoring. You know, how does this healthcare system work in this country I've just arrived in? How do I get a tax code? How do I deal with care for my baby or whatever it might be? And then there is the scientific mentoring, you know, how to advance your career, how to even navigate through the departmental processes in the university, whatever it might be. So if somebody from your country has already gone through that, they can certainly help you through these mentoring and diaspora networks. One example here, a particular example, these two people in the picture are two young Ukrainian scientists. They were here in Trieste last year, one of our science diplomacy workshops. And they've been very active in creating an online platform for the Ukrainian diaspora. Really, they don't want to lose Ukrainian scientists that are being scattered around the world right now. They want to ensure that they stay connected to their country and can help rebuild that country when it is safe to go back and do so. And that's the essence of the discussions that we're talking about today. Just very quickly to tie up on some of the things that we have been doing within our organizations here in Trieste. One has been this declaration of what we call our Science in Exile activity. It was launched by Princess Sumaya of Jordan in April 2022, and it's really a list, a call for action, if you like, an awareness-raising campaign. And there are 6 commitments. I'll give you a chance to read them. I'm not going to go through them all. But just let me highlight especially the last one. I'll stand out of the way here so you can all see it. The last one here is work towards rebuilding national scientific systems in the aftermath of conflict, and maybe what we hear not only in the aftermath or disaster, and support the voluntary safe repatriation of scientists. But you can see this is just the 6th of a list of 6 commitments that a number of organizations, academies, universities, scientific unions and so on have signed up to give their support to this declaration. And I think I'm going to stop there. Thank you for your attention.
This one? So thank you, Peter, for setting the scene, and thank you everyone for attending this event, and thank you everyone for inviting me to this very wonderful opportunity, the panel. So my today's topic is particularly linked to what Peter has said. Empowering peace and resilience, the role of women leadership, technologies, and diaspora in conflict and displacement. So I have 4 major concepts that I would like to give to you. The first one is that we have to begin the reconstruction amid the conflict. It is already too late to wait for the post-conflict. That is one concept. The second concept is what we call brain bridging. So people are worried about brain loss if someone migrated from their country. But we come up with new ideology, which is called brain circulation and brain bridging. So for example, I'm out of my country. So my country lost me. So I don't perceive it this way. I am trying to link my country and the rest of the world, like yourself. So this is the idea of brain bridging. And the third idea is the role of leadership, especially women leadership, amid crisis. So in the conflicted countries, we have to build peace. So who is making peace? Guys are busy fighting, so it is our responsibility to build peace. So that there is a big role that women could play amid the crisis, but I will go details in the next slides about these ideas. And then at the third slide, a final concept, I would like to tell you what we are doing to combine all these concepts so that we can make practical impact on the ground. So begin reconstruction, why crisis is still ongoing, it is super important because actually the future is here already in the next. We cannot be left behind because we have wars and conflicts. We don't wait for post-conflict to reconstruct the country. So we have to do anything right here, right now. Brain bridging, so we have to utilize the diaspora to link the world and that devastated countries amidst the crisis. Our friends, our scientists are inside the country. They cannot raise their voices. They cannot do much. So we have to take more responsibilities to speak out, to connect, to talk to you, and then do anything we can to bridge between our countries and the world. So again, women leadership. So we are natural peacemakers and we are nurturing. So in health sector, I'm a medical scientist. In health sector, 70% of the health personnel are women. So we have that concept. Health as a bridge for peace. So health is a sector where we can build peace, especially in conflict settings. So amid the war, the medical doctors don't discriminate anyone. So we could bring peace while treating everyone together. In this case, we can deliver messages about peace and all the other important knowledge, whoever is fighting in the country. So this is a very important concept that we are focusing on. And then, based on these concepts, we have built up a virtual medical school. So I'm the head of that virtual school, utilizing all these concepts. So during the COVID-19, we all realized that technology is very useful to deliver knowledge, such as Zoom classes and etc. Of course, if you can, I would encourage physical teaching classroom like that. But amid conflicts, you have to utilize any way you can to deliver the knowledge. So we use technologies, and also we use a lot of other means of teachings to make sure that science continues, education continues in our country. So I would like to move towards the virtual university that we have built up, which is called Spring University Myanmar. So to give you a little bit of background, Myanmar is under conflict, maybe the worst civil war or the longest civil war that the world could imagine. And also in 2021, there was a military coup happened, and then people like yourself, professors, students, engineers, doctors, they stood up for justice. Only because they stood up for justice, they were dismissed from their positions. Students are under hiding. Their education is interrupted. So in order to continue their profession and also students' education, we set up this university. And then we have a lot of faculties under this university, also development partners, local partners, and international partners, practically using innovative means. So we have 25,000 students enrollment, 200 faculty members, 800 micro-credentials, and 12 diploma programs. And I would like to draw your attention to the School of Health that we are trying very hard to build up. So since this is amid crisis and wars, we are trying to be practical. We don't talk about plastic surgery. We only talk about like how to resuscitate someone in the crisis. So we have to be practical. On the other hand, it is amid crisis and war, so we have to be even more ethical. We cannot let go of our moral values only because there is wars and conflicts. And also we have to be innovative. We cannot use normal teaching methods. And also we are trying to be revolutionary, meaning that we have to change the system. We have to change the mindset. And also we have to be transformative. So based on these value, we are trying to make direct impacts on the ground, meaning that we actually collected students from the ground. So in our school, students came from different states and countries. They are literally inside the countries. For example, some of the students are attending classes, but yesterday there was an airstrikes, and the students actually resuscitated the patients and then went to our classes. So we are actually connecting with people on the ground in day-to-day business. So they are not cut out from the world, and we are trying our best to give the best solution to them. So actually, there is a very unique things about our activity. For example, because these students and professors are dismissed from their professional positions, the military actually have a lot of persecutions and laws, so they have to be really hiding and also have to follow anonymity and confidentiality protocols so that they are safe. So I just would like to tell you that you are openly sitting here listening to the talks. It is not the opportunity for them, and they are not doing anything wrong, they are just learning. But then, only because you would like to learn something innovative, you are in danger. So this is literally what is happening inside the country. So these photos, these are our students. So we have to use a kind of avatar, nickname, so that their identity are hidden. Also, we have a lot of strict online rules and regulations, but I'm not gonna talk about this a lot. So we have to be super innovative. We cannot be one-sided teaching. We cannot talk about theories. We have to be solution-focused. We have to use a lot of simulations, role-playing, but also just note that there are a lot of innovation happening from our side to make sure that our students are learning essential education. So also we have physical programs on the ground, but due to the security issues, I won't go over that, but some of the students cannot access to the internet. For them, we are using radio and other channels. And also we have innovation like some boxes. If you are scientists, you can understand these innovation. So you don't have internet, but we deliver these boxes to the students, and then they learn like local network, local internet. But anyway, please note that we have to use a lot of innovation, and our students are inside the country amid the crisis. So they are medical doctors, nurses, and also public health specialists handling this crisis at the time being. While I am talking, they are there doing their job, treating patients, and also hiding from the bomb and airstrikes. So my message to you is that there are so many things that we could do together, but the way forward is that kind of crisis country need your attention. You just being here is actually very helpful, but also what you could do is that you can deliver ideas if you have, like, we have that new idea which we call Professors Without Border. So in this kind of innovation, anyone can sign up and deliver your knowledge to the people who are in these crisis situations through internet or through innovative ways or through our channels. But this is a very huge development, so I may not be able to deliver all the activities in this 20 minutes presentation. So what the international science community could do, one thing is this panel. This is a pathway for the people like us to deliver what is happening inside the country. So this is very important to have that kind of experience. So I really wish your organizations thrive so that we have a channel to connect to the world, and inviting me here so that I can talk about my students, I can talk about our teachers, so that I can talk to you. That kind of things are very important. And also, like, we have to change our mindset. So international development agencies, they are waiting until post-conflict to help Myanmar, to help Afghanistan or Sudan. My encouragement is that please don't wait. Do anything you can. Some of the organizations keep funding for the post-conflict development. I don't think it is sometimes rational because people need help right now. And also any help is okay, not only funding. Just listening is also very helpful. Just showing us care, empathy is also really, really meaningful. So to summarize, because of the time limitation, if my presentation is so rough, sorry about that, but I want you to know that there is a lot going on, and also in crisis countries, people are trying their best, especially displaced scientists, inside and outside together, and the place like this is very meaningful for all of us. So thank you so much for inviting me here.
Wow, thank you so much for that amazing presentation. It's a privilege to be here with you on this panel. Sorry. So I want to talk to you about the Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World. I'm Tonya Blowers. I'm originally from the UK. I've migrated all the way to Italy. And the Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World is located just by that lovely white castle you can see over there. All of our organizations are there right now. We work on the same campus. But the interesting thing about the Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World is we don't really bring people to Italy. Some of our fellows will come here for 5-day workshops, but all of the people that we work with are based in the developing world. We have nearly 11,000 members based throughout the developing countries in 115 countries. That's nearly all of the developing countries that exist. And we have 54 national chapters, which are concentrated groups of women scientists who get together in their own countries. They identify the challenges that they have, and they try and find some solutions. They can be activities, they can be events. A lot of the time it's just getting together and sharing with each other the difficulties that they have. And so I'm going to talk to you today mostly about how OWSD is supporting displaced women scientists, because that's really the theme of this panel today. But before I do that, I just wanted to consider that displaced women scientists are really facing such a combination of challenges. The first one, of course, is just the challenge that face all women scientists throughout the world. You'll all be very well aware that there are under 30% of women in the world who are doing science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Some of the STEM subjects are much less represented than others. Mathematics, for example, is very poorly represented by women. Computing, technology, especially those disciplines that will be very, very important in this new industrial revolution. The high-paying jobs that need those disciplines are very well underrepresented by women. This is a huge problem as well, of course, because women bring very specific experiences, contacts, knowledge that is being lost. Already it's a challenge to be a woman scientist. You can imagine the double challenge of being a woman scientist in the developing world. You don't have the same resources that we have here. It's very hard to have a laboratory, to have equipment, to have technicians, to have the equipment maintained by regular technicians. That's just the kind of general challenges that men and women scientists face. But women, on top of that, in developing countries, face very specific kind of cultural expectations. It can be difficult, for example, for a woman to leave her country in some parts of the world if she doesn't have the permission of her husband or of her father. Mobility is extremely limited, and that obviously affects your ability to do science, to network, to meet other people that are working in your field. In general, scientists in the developing world don't have the same access to contacts that we do here, for example. We can freely go to conferences, we freely meet people, we get recommendations, we can publish. Those kinds of things can be very, very challenging in developing countries. And of course, funding is a massive problem. So let's now come to the triple challenge of being a woman scientist who is also displaced. There are many different areas where this can affect women, but a lot of women are being displaced both within their countries and they have to leave their countries. Whenever women are displaced, it's majority of people who are refugees are actually women and children. They are then being housed in very fragile settlements. Those settlements don't have good access to water and sanitation. That's particularly difficult, can be particularly difficult for women in various circumstances. So there are all of these kind of very specific issues. Security in these big settlement camps is a huge problem. Women are exposed to harassment and to violence. The situation in the camps itself is a very high pressure zone, so there can be a lot of partner violence as well that happens. Children are not getting into schools. The women are having to look after them in the settlements. If they're not in schools, there's a whole kind of knock-on effect, and child marriage is also very common. So there are masses of problems facing women who are displaced. If you want to also be a scientist, you might think that's an overwhelming challenge. Well, at OWSD we decided to try and see what we could do in this situation. And we were able to come up with a program which has this wonderful moniker, WISDOM, which stands for Women in Science Displaced Outreach Masters, WISDOM. And the idea is that women who are already living in host countries, so the two countries that we are working with right now are Jordan and Turkey, and two very specific institutes. So in Jordan we're working with Hashemite University, and in Turkey we're working with Aydın University. And these two universities, Jordan receives many refugees from Afghanistan, from Sudan, from Syria, and Turkey likewise, maybe also from Iraq. In order to apply for this program, we were able to find 24 scholarships. This is the very first year we are offering this scholarship. It's a pilot study. We opened the call for applications in April. We had to do a lot of work with the institutes to advertise the program. We had to make sure that displaced women at these institutes or in these countries would be aware of this opportunity. So that in itself, the outreach for even opening the call was a big deal. We managed to get a very impressive number of applications, 155 applications. These are all women who were based in the country. They had refugee status, or they had applied for refugee status, and they already had an undergraduate degree in a relevant subject to doing a master's degree in STEM. And we were able to, we had a special selection committee. We worked very closely with the institutes to understand how we were going to go through the selection. The awardees had to select a department that they wanted to work in, and all of their relevant qualifications were checked. Also, there were issues around being taught in English or being taught in Turkish, for example. So they had to prove that they could speak the language of the course. So this has just begun, and now the awardees are starting their course, and we're going to be offering some kind of conversations and workshops with the institute and with the fellows to try and find out from the fellows exactly what their challenges are in that specific country, in that specific institute. And Phyu here, for example, is a researcher for us. She is doing a kind of analysis of her own country, Myanmar. She's working with another one of our researchers from Sudan. They're trying to identify common issues that refugee scientists might have, but specifically women refugee scientists. And Phyu will be the first to tell you that there is very little research that's linking those three challenges right now. So Phu's evidence and her research will be brought to bear on our discussions at this workshop. Yeah, I've just talked about that. And what are we going to do next? Next year, we're hoping to have 2 more institutes, this time in Africa. I don't know how many of you are aware that Africa has, one of the highest, obviously you're aware that it has one of the very high displacement trends. And you can see here from 2017 to 2024, the number of displaced people has more than doubled in 8 years, from 20 million to 45 million. The green is external displacement and the blue is internal displacement. But where are they going, these people? You might think they're all coming here. Actually, they're not. African countries are hosting African refugees. And here you can see, for example, Uganda has 1.7 million refugees. Kenya has nearly 1 million refugees. Countries like Chad, Ethiopia, Sudan, Democratic Republic of Congo are in conflict, and they are hosting all of these refugees. And in fact, Antonio Guterres said, Africa's generosity to those fleeing from war and persecution is unmatched, and an example that compassion is not proportional to wealth. So we will be working with institutes in Uganda and Kenya, and they will bring a whole different range of refugees that come from Sudan, from Somalia, from Eritrea, from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we will be working with them to understand their specific challenges and to offer hope and a future to the women refugees who, I'd just like to end with the idea that if you offer a future and a career to a woman refugee, you're not just funding an individual, you are really working with a community, and the impact of the one woman is massive. I don't have time to give you examples right now, but honestly, it's very, very impressive. Phyu is a very good example of all of that knock-on effect one woman's determination can have. So, thank you.
Thank you to all three of our speakers. I think we'll do the last speakers session a little bit differently. We don't have a PowerPoint presentation for you, but we have questions. So I will pose some questions to Alessandro, and he will be answering the questions. So Alessandro, my first question to you is, why is science important for developing countries?
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. And thanks for inviting me. First of all, it's such a pleasure to be back again in Trieste, and it's so nice to see a whole city discussing on science and from so many different angles. So thank you very much. And to answer why science is important for developing countries, I would start from its opposite. So why it's important for developed countries, or for what we sometimes call advanced countries. So in the global north, we tend sometimes to take for granted the benefit and how much science is at the base of our standard of living and our quality of life. So we tackled our basic needs in terms of food security, access to energy, healthcare, and we are now focusing our efforts on innovating on research and technology to build hopefully a stronger and more resilient and inclusive society, which is also sustainable thanks to technology. While at the same time, if we look at the developing countries, this is not the case. So in those countries, there is still need to address basic human needs. So you need to have healthcare, you need access to electricity, you need to protect the environment, to have access to clean water. So there is not always enough space for science in public policies. This tends to increase digital divide, technology gaps, and also to increase the dependence on the North, which is providing those technologies. So this is where international cooperation comes. So, and these efforts that we all do and your organizations do together become important. So we need to fill this gap, making sure that what we do in the North, which is not only finding technology, is innovating, is being able to increase and advance in technology and in science, becomes also a chance for the Global South. So the Global South doesn't miss talents, doesn't miss brains. We need to give these brains an opportunity. And if those countries are not able to give an opportunity because of the lack of financial resources, then international cooperation, the United Nations system and UNESCO is there, and we need to do our part to make sure that young talents can, for example, come to Trieste, study at ICTP, TWAS, and have the opportunity to engage with an international scientific community, get the capacity to be back in their country and to innovate and to find their own solution for their own problems. We see, for example, pharmaceutical research that we do in the North doesn't necessarily answers the needs of the South. So that's why we need doctors from the Global South finding own solutions for those diseases. So the Italian government you mentioned is traditionally very close to this topic, and the support that we give to the Trieste organizations comes from this philosophy and to help the Global South to reach this and fill this gap. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just so you know, I have questions for Alessandro, but I hope you have all got questions for our panel as well, so you can pose them to them in the question and answer session. Alessandro, thank you. My next question is, how can science diplomacy help to settle disputes and reach agreement?
That's a nice one. It's, you know, science and diplomacy, if you take them separately, they do not necessarily speak the same language. On one side, you have science, which is based on facts, on logical reasoning. The other side, you have diplomacy, which is basically two different wheels, political wheels, that need to find a common way. So once you put together science and diplomacy, you can bridge those gaps. You can find that common language that you might miss in other fields, and start putting together some confidence-building measures that can help really a logical reasoning between two parties that might not agree on all of the rest. So if you think, for example, of CERN or ICTP, I mean, nuclear 70 years ago, CERN is turning 70 in a couple of days. So 70 years ago, if you told a diplomat the word nuclear, he would immediately think about nuclear weapons. So if you say that nuclear can also be the study of particle physics, an accelerator, a synchrotron, then you start saying something different. And if you put scientists from so many countries together, you can build something new, something which is good for mankind, and that's how the World Wide Web came up. And as Abdus Salam was saying, if you also have scientists that don't come only from the north, but come from all over the world, you can let the mankind benefit from these brains, regardless their origin. So science diplomacy was helping in those times a city like Trieste that was at the border between the two worlds to become an example of peace. But also science needs diplomacy, because for all these big infrastructure that we need to conduct high-level research, if we think Elettra, synchrotron, and all the other big infrastructures, and BSBF is going to come in town in a few days, and we will see how the big infrastructures are key and crucial to stimulate innovation. Big infrastructure need big investment from many countries and need international cooperation to go and prosper. And at sometimes these infrastructures are also helping dialogue even in time of crisis. So for example, you mentioned Jordan, and Jordan hosts Sesam, which is a synchrotron, which in the Middle East is hosting researchers from the whole region, despite the very difficult situation that those countries are living. So WISDOM, I think, is a very good acronym, and we need to find one for hope that science diplomacy will give us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. I think those are remarkable examples that you've put across. I've got two more questions. The next one is, what role can scientists play in the reconstruction process? We heard from our panelists their perspective. I think it'll be interesting to see how you see it.
Thank you. Of course, they are key, because if we can find a home for them while they're in troubles, while their countries are at risk, then they can be among the best helpers for their country during the reconstruction and even before. So it's true what they were saying, that we need to work already now, and it's really good to see what the organizations are already doing, and we are trying to do the same also on Ukraine, which is of course part of those countries that are at risk now. And we don't need actually to go too far to see an example of how a scientist can help rebuild its own country. We cannot forget what happened in Europe, in Italy in the 20th century, and if we think of Rita Levi-Montalcini, we have a clear example. So we have a scientist, a lady scientist, that for her religion was forced to leave her country and to find a new home in the US. She got a home. She didn't give up all the difficulties of starting a new life abroad. She set up her lab at home. She couldn't have access, of course, to digital libraries, no internet connection. There was no open access in articles. But still, she pursued her career, and she became the first Italian to earn the Nobel Prize for Medicine. And her studies on neurobiology are still considered a reference for her field. And when she was back to Italy finally after the war, with her background, her international background, she was so great in empowering our research system. She was the first woman to be admitted to the Pontificia Accademia delle Scienze. We know how academies of science are crucial in countries. And she had also a second challenge to tackle, which was being a woman. It was not easy when she studied. It is still not easy for women scientists now in Europe. It's not easy in the developing world. So eventually she became a role model, and in the reconstruction of Italy, in our identity, still she's our grandmother, of scientist grandmother, because she's really, she's been a model for not only girls, but also for men and all doctors and beyond. So I think, thinking of her experience, we can really be sympathetic on the life of so many scientists, and I wish you really the best for you and for all the other fellow colleagues that are working with you on this topic. And Italy is trying to do its part, and of course I think opportunities like the one of today are crucial to shed light on this issue and to raise the awareness of the general public on this topic. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Alessandro. And you touched upon Italy. I think my last question is, how does the Ministry of Foreign Affairs help in these efforts?
Yeah, so the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is focusing also on science diplomacy. We have a broad network of 50 scientific attachés across the world, posted in our embassies in the 5 continents. So not only in Europe and the Americas, as you might think at the beginning, but across Africa, South Asia, Latin America. So they are an entry point for our scientific community when they enter in cooperation with local universities, but they are also a point of entrance for local scientists to Italy. So we engage them also in promoting Trieste as a hub for scientists from the developing world to come and being part of the international research community and finding opportunities in this wonderful network of research centers that this city hosts.
Thank you. Thank you very much. With that, I have my questions with Alessandro over, so maybe a round of applause for him too, even if he didn't present. And I'd like to thank all four panelists here. I hope they're prepared for questions from the public now. Any questions from anyone out there? No? I have some questions, but I'd rather listen to your questions than pose my questions. No? Okay, so yeah, you have.
I have a question for Phyu. So, when you say we, are you talking about the summer university, or do you have a bigger organization?
So you want some clarification on how we are working with them. So inside the country, our university is criminalized. So to counteract against that, all we can do is to collaborate more with international universities. So there are innovative Western universities who are not afraid of breaking their, politics could be so complicated. In Myanmar, we are not very sure about which one is legitimate government, etc. But then they don't care about that. They are very open and collaborate with our university and running joint programs and delivering trainings. By doing that, indirectly, we are legitimate. So this is why we are trying so hard to collaborate with international university. So far we have 7 universities. Also, I think we have one organization in Italy working with our school, but it is not from my school, so I don't know the name, but I think the School of Law is working, and also like other universities. So am I answering your question? Or the whole university. So we have 250 faculty members and 25,000 students, and also 11 schools. School of Law, School of Health Peace Studies, School of Health, and also many other schools, but in total 12 schools. So actually I'm going to be a provost soon, because the current provost, they nominated me to be the provost. So in this case, I will have more say over other schools. For now, I could only talk about my own school and how we are collaborating with other organizations. So when it comes to my school, our collaborators are Australian universities. So Melbourne University and ANU, they are trying to help our students, mentoring and also giving guidance on how we should conduct research and publications. So we are trying so hard to make sure that our school is actually becoming accredited and also becoming more official in the international level. Yes.
I have a question to the person who was presenting the organization of women in science. I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. Oops. I was just thinking, which is the effect on these women when they finish the studies and they stay in the country? Do you have any plans regarding on the topic or projections?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a work in progress. I mean, I was just talking with Phyu this morning about this, that anybody currently getting a master's degree in those countries is going to face difficulties afterwards. Anybody, not just a displaced person, anybody that there is huge unemployment in general. So yeah, it is a challenge to know where they're going afterwards, and I think it's a huge issue that we have to start tackling straight away, and these workshops will try and consider that question. There is a lot of, for example, in Jordan, they're putting a lot of funding into what they call TVET, which is, training, vocational, making links with industry. So it may be that there is some very specific training that could take place there. But I wonder if maybe, Phyu, you would have something to say about Beyond Masters? No?
Just another example, if you like, the situation in Ukraine is that the men have to stay behind because they may be called up to join the army, but many women scientists left. But there was always a strong, if they were asked, there was always a strong feeling that they were going to go home. They were temporarily displaced, they wanted to go home, they wanted to continue their studies and go home. And I think this is a very strong feeling, probably not only amongst Ukrainian women, but women in general, that, they are the nurturers, as you said. So I think this is one example. So.
Yeah, I mean, typically with our programs, the whole idea is, of course, to go home and to build what we call capacity at in your home. Unfortunately, these countries, these are very ongoing, long conflicts. It's not clear when these people can go home, right? So there does need to be some other kind of alternative that they can contribute something in the countries where they make their new homes too. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. My question is also for Mrs. Brouwers. Sorry. Since the idea of, social mentoring was introduced at the beginning of the lecture, I would like to know if those 24 refugees that were awarded the opportunity to study, if you know how was their experiences in social mentoring or through this process.
Okay, so they literally, we just selected the awardees for Turkey just last week. And the Jordan ones we just selected in July, so they haven't actually started their program. They're going to start in October. So we don't have that kind of information yet, but surely that will be part of the discussions that we will have. Are you maybe suggesting that they might have had additional support in order to make these applications in the first place?
No, I was just wondering how was the process for them in order to get introduced socially on how in their new society they're integrated.
Right, that's not something that we have information about at this point, but it certainly will be, very important to how they manage to do their degrees. Certainly the social integration will be something that we will look at for sure.
Are there any more questions? No? Okay, I have a question. Maybe, Peter, this is one for you. Are there numbers of how many displaced scientists there are?
Okay, so I think in my presentation I gave numbers, known numbers from the UNHCR. I think that flashed up 79 million displaced persons in 2021. As you register your refugee status with UNHCR, you are not asked what your career is, what your job is, what you're expert at. So you are just a name and a number. So on those sort of official registration forms, there is no counting, or at least there has not been any counting of how many scientists are actually being displaced. The UNHCR are starting to do that, starting to ask those questions, and that's partly because of the work we've done here in Trieste, actually, sort of raising awareness, the declaration that I mentioned. We did some rough calculations one time back in 2017-18, when people were leaving Syria, people were leaving Yemen, and it was a very back of the envelope. We knew the proportion of scientists per head of population in Syria. We knew the proportion of scientists per head of population in Yemen. We knew how many people had left Syria, had left Yemen, same for Afghanistan, and we did, a very, very rough calculation. And at that point, we were estimating 10,000, I think, is what we came up with. But I emphasize a very rough, unknown exact number. And of course that was already 3, 4, 5 years ago, and so since then there has been a second wave of exodus from Myanmar. Sudan right now is having trouble. There are people leaving Sudan. None of those countries, I think, have returned to a state of normality. We've had Ukraine, of course, since then. So you can imagine the number of scientists coming to Europe, trying to get to the USA, Canada, displaced in Africa. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to raise awareness amongst the universities, amongst the research centers, the academies of science, to really put this issue on the center of their agenda and make space available in their laboratories, in their teaching centers. So, thank you. Not a perfect answer, but it's as good as we've got.
Any other questions from the audience? No? Okay, I've got a question, but it's not for anybody in particular. It's just, what challenges do displaced scientists face when trying to enter support programs? Maybe if you feel that this might be a good one for you, but...
So this is a very great question, but there are so many segments to that. So when we talk about displaced, it can be internally displaced, and this is another problem, how they have to work around and continue. And then to your question, when they are displaced into another country and then trying to integrate to this institution, usual problem, including myself, I'm actually a displaced scientist only because I stood up for justice. I'm now blacklisted. I cannot go back to my country. So what are the struggles? Usual struggles. Women are always trying very hard to prove that they are worthy. Even in a university like Hong Kong University, still they prefer male scientists over women. Of course, the trends are changing, but we are still struggling about our worthiness. Yes, we can do that. That is one challenge. Other challenges could be like funding, and also to be accommodating to the new culture, also our responsibilities as women, if you have families, if you are a mother, and so many other pressures because of your home. Your home is in conflicts. So your relatives, even like your mothers, your brothers, could be dying, dead already inside. So these mental health issues are actually too much for someone to bear. So scientists, they are also human beings with feelings. So I would say mental health issues, funding issues, struggling with new environment, trying to prove that you are a great person to your institution. It is also very stressful. I'm standing here looking strong, but there are so many amount of efforts that I have made to be able to do these things every day. So I'm not so sure if I'm answering to your question. Okay, thank you.
Just to add another dynamic to answer that question, if you see your country is on the brink of something and you feel at risk, If you are an established professor, you've already developed your international networks. It's easy to call up a friend, a colleague, someone you've collaborated with, say, look, I'm really looking for a way out here. Can you help me? Can I come to your university? And very often something can happen. If you're a young scientist at the early stage of your career, if you're still a PhD student, you haven't had the chance to build those networks yet, you don't have the reputation, it is much more difficult. So there is a sort of gradation there. Really, the early career scientists struggle much more than the established scientists as well.
Any more questions from the audience? No? Okay, I've got one more question, Tonya. I think this is for you. Are the needs of displaced women scientists different from those of men?
I think I spent some time trying to say that they were. I think there's still a lot of research that needs to be done on this. There isn't much data about it yet, but clearly a huge issue is security and protection, and the threat of violence of all kinds. As I said, also access to sanitation because of women's biological needs, but also because of their responsibilities that can make their lives much more challenging. Even poverty and food security, which of course is endemic in these settlements. If you are a pregnant woman or a lactating woman, those things can have a much bigger effect on you. I think Phyu mentioned mental health issues with because women. I don't like to make these kind of determining gestures about women do this and men do this, but they tend to. Women tend to be, because of societal pressures and habits, they tend to be much, much more linked to community, and they are caretakers. And so they are responsible for the well-being of everybody around them as well, and that can be and the people back home in a different way perhaps than men are. Yeah, so there's lots of very different issues. That's not to say, I think, that men don't also experience incredibly pressing challenges as men because of the expectations for them as well to be the breadwinner. I mean, the labour market is another interesting aspect because women tend to get casual, informal, low-paid work, whereas men will get, they will more easily be in the system and getting, regular wages, whereas women might get cleaning jobs and then they're competing with other women for cleaning jobs. They can have more challenges for their legal documents because a lot of the documentation may only be in the man's name, and then even getting their citizenship, they will have trouble getting citizenship because they don't have access in the same way that the men do. And then land rights, all of these things, legal issues, everything that can be difficult for women in a normal situation, in a displaced situation, I think is just amplified.
Thank you, Tonya. I think I've got one final question. I think we'll close with you, Phyu. So we understand what might be commonalities between that you may have come across between yourself and maybe other displaced scientists, no matter which country or which region they come from. But can you talk maybe a little bit about what is it that you see that is dissimilar as well that you've come across in your experience?
This is such a very brilliant question and also tricky because a lot of challenges are very similar, but something actually dissimilar is very tricky. So in general, I think the nature of the crisis in each country are different. So the way we have to handle the situation is quite different. So getting back to what Tonya said, we have a research on impact of conflicts in gender. We conducted the study in Myanmar and Sudan. So we have an identical questionnaire to deliver our participants, but we have to really modify because the two countries, the conflicts, the people, the culture are very different. So we actually cannot use identical questionnaire for the same country. So we really have to brainstorm. We are similar, but quite different in many ways. So I cannot give you one dissimilarity, but there are a lot. But we all are humans, so it is not too far, but still kind of maybe cultural difference. Even the wordings in the questionnaires, we have to be careful. Also, when we ask income, also it could be really sensitive in one country, but not in another country. So yeah, I could tell you a lot of dissimilarities between our experiences, but yeah, that might be the answer to you. Thank you.
I think with that brings us to the closure of this session. I want to say thank you very much to our speakers who have really provided a lot of food for thought for us, and I hope you all in the audience enjoyed this session as well. Thank you very much, and maybe a round of applause for our speakers.